Sanctions can often sound like a complex tool of international diplomacy reserved for tense geopolitical standoffs. In simple terms, however, they are essentially penalties. One country imposes these penalties on another to try and influence its behavior. Think of them not as acts of war involving soldiers or weapons, but as measures of economic pressure. They are designed to make it difficult for the targeted country to trade certain goods or do business in specific sectors. The goal is to create enough economic discomfort that the government of the targeted nation reconsiders the policy or action that prompted the sanctions. It is a strategic move on the world stage, a way of saying we disapprove of what you are doing without resorting to more aggressive actions. In a decisive move sending shockwaves through the North American economic landscape, the Canadian government has implemented retaliatory tariffs on a wide range of American goods. This bold countermeasure, a direct reply to U.S. actions, introduces a level of uncertainty not seen in decades, leaving businesses scrambling to understand the immediate and long-term implications. This decision, announced from Parliament Hill, marks a significant escalation in the trade dispute with our southern neighbor. For generations, the Canada-U.S. trade relationship has been a model of stability. But this tit-for-tat exchange, triggered by American tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, signals a stark departure from that partnership. The federal government frames this action not as aggression, but as a necessary response. Officials say that behind the scenes, weeks of intense diplomatic negotiations failed to alter American policy. Despite repeated attempts to find common ground, the talks reached an impasse, leaving Canada with what it describes as no other viable option. The sanctions are designed to be proportional, a dollar-for-dollar retaliation targeting U.S. goods equivalent in value to the economic harm Canada expects to suffer. The list is extensive and strategic, including industrial materials and consumer goods like whiskey and orange juice, aiming to exert political pressure by impacting key industries in specific U.S. states. The government's primary goal is to defend Canadian jobs and industries from what it calls unfair protectionist measures. Given the deeply integrated economies, where supply chains crisscross the border for a single product, this is a delicate balancing act. The strategy is to inflict calculated economic pain while trying to shield Canadian consumers from the fallout. The risks are immense, as this could trigger further retaliation. The government is walking a tightrope, hoping this show of strength brings the U.S. back to the negotiating table. The direct trigger for Canada's retaliatory tariffs is a United States law called the Buy American Act of 2025. It was signed into law earlier this year, imposing stringent new requirements on American companies and federally funded projects. It mandates that federally funded projects must use iron, steel, and other manufactured goods produced almost entirely in the United States. Canadian steel mills in Hamilton and Sault Ste. Marie have long supplied materials for American-built cars and major U.S. construction projects. The 2025 Buy American Act effectively severs many of those supply chains, signaling Canadian goods are no longer welcome. For Canadian companies that rely on exporting to the United States, the Buy American Act has created immense uncertainty. A steel fabricator in Ontario might see orders dry up overnight, leading to potential layoffs and scaled-back operations affecting real jobs and communities. On the consumer side, the abstract language of trade disputes becomes tangible. Canada's retaliatory tariffs are appearing on store shelves, directly impacting household budgets. These sanctions target specific American products, and as importers pass costs down the supply chain, prices for everyday shoppers inevitably climb. A family doing their weekly grocery shopping might notice their favorite American brands of ketchup or orange juice are suddenly more expensive. This is the direct result of tariffs being passed to consumers, forcing a choice: absorb the cost, or switch to a Canadian or other non-American alternative. The economic pain isn't one-sided. American businesses feel the consequences acutely. A California winery, for example, now finds its products artificially inflated in price in Canada. This makes it significantly harder to compete against tariff-free wines from Europe or South America, threatening long-standing business relationships. Similarly, an Ohio factory making appliances for Canada could see a sharp drop in orders. This forces difficult decisions about scaling back production, idling machinery, and potentially reducing its workforce. The uncertainty sends economic ripples through the local community, impacting both jobs and suppliers. The list of targeted items was not random. It was curated for strategic and symbolic weight. It includes highly visible consumer staples like ketchup, a condiment with iconic American branding, plus prepared meals, coffee, and strawberry jam. This selection ensures the tariffs are felt in kitchens across the country. Beyond the grocery store, the list extends to recreational goods like motorboats, sailboats, and kayaks, as well as canoes and sleeping bags. This was a calculated move designed to hit politically sensitive U.S. regions where the outdoor manufacturing industry is a major employer, thereby amplifying the political pressure. Major industrial goods like American-made refrigerators and dishwashers were also targeted. These tariffs raise costs, not just for families, but also for home builders and renovation projects. The strategy was clear: avoid essentials without substitutes, but spread pressure widely across key U.S. export sectors. This demonstrates that trade isn't just raw materials, it's also about the cultural and consumer goods shaping our daily lives. Seeing familiar, trusted American brands on a tariff list is a potent reminder of how distant government disputes can directly impact personal choices in household finances. Beyond the economic fallout, this conflict strains the very foundation of the Canada-US relationship. For over a century, the nations have been more than neighbors. They've been steadfast allies and integrated economic collaborators, a partnership built on a bedrock of mutual trust and shared prosperity. The current dispute challenges these core principles. It introduces a level of friction and hostility not seen in generations. The retaliatory measures, while deemed necessary by Ottawa, risk transforming a cooperative partnership into a zero-sum game, turning trusted friends into economic adversaries on the world stage. Looking ahead, several paths exist, each with profound implications. The most optimistic involves a swift return to negotiations. In this scenario, economic pressure from American industries hurt by retaliatory tariffs persuades Washington to grant Canada significant Buy American exemptions, particularly in deeply integrated sectors like auto manufacturing. This breakthrough would allow Canada to lift its own sanctions and fully normalize trade. For Canadian diplomats, this is the primary goal. Not just removing tariffs, but restoring the predictability and stability that businesses on both sides of the border rely on to invest and grow, reaffirming the special economic relationship. A less ideal and more worrying possibility is a prolonged stalemate. Here, both governments, driven by domestic political calculations, dig in their heels, unwilling to be seen as backing down. This creates a new normal of higher costs and complicated cross-border trade. Businesses would be forced to adapt by undertaking the painful and expensive process of seeking new suppliers and markets. Consumers would adjust to sustained price increases on everything from groceries to construction materials, leading to a painful and inefficient restructuring of the entire North American economy. However, experts on both sides of the border agree that there is a darker path still: outright escalation. This is the worst-case scenario, where the dispute spirals into a full-blown trade war, with sweeping tit-for-tat tariffs crippling entire industries. The economic fallout could be catastrophic, potentially triggering a recession, causing widespread unemployment, and severely damaging the long-standing Canada-US alliance. This would impact cooperation on everything from continental security to shared environmental challenges, poisoning the relationship for years to come. Given the high stakes, most analysts believe the most likely path forward lies somewhere in the middle. This involves a slow, arduous negotiation toward an eventual compromise, not a complete victory for either side, but a deal that allows both leaders to claim they protected national interests while restoring the partnership's spirit. For now, from factory floors in Windsor to shipping ports in Vancouver, Canadians must watch closely. The hope remains for a pragmatic resolution that protects our interests while mending the fractures in our relationship with our most important neighbor, ensuring a stable and prosperous future for both nations.